They appeared, out of nowhere, as if the silence hadn't been final, and now they say they want to come back. Come back to where exactly? Because it's no longer clear where the us is, if that even still exists. There's talk of a fresh start, but it's pretended that the end didn't leave scars. As if everything had passed unscathed. It didn't. It wasn't light. It wasn't simple. But the scene is set, one saying they feel, the other trying not to show it. And the question lingers, did they come to fix things, or just to mess them up again? They appeared, without explanation, without context, as if the time between absences meant nothing, as if the silences that followed weren't final, but they were. Still they appeared. Anne said they wanted to come back, said it like someone asking, but without lowering their voice. Like someone who knows the impact they make, but prefers not to admit it. Like someone who thinks they can once again step over the line that separates was from still is. They said they miss you, said they've thought a lot, said time has made them reflect on everything that was left unresolved. And it was at that moment that reality cracked, because those who listen, listen from within. And inside, there are shards. There's a story that hasn't ended, not because it was unfinished, but because it was abandoned. And when something is left behind, you don't expect a return. You expect a scar. But there was a return, and along with it, a challenge. Because those who show up after the end carry everything they caused, even if they hide behind the calm tone, the calculated smile, the carefully chosen words. The attempt to return hurts more than the end itself, because it demands a confrontation with what was buried without mourning, and confronting what was swept under the silence comes with a cost, high, invisible, but real. Those who hear this kind of return don't just hear the voice, they hear the echoes. What was left unexplained, what hurt in silence, what you wished had been said, but never was. And now all of this comes back compressed into a simple phrase. I thought a lot about everything we've been through. But thinking doesn't erase, and going back doesn't solve anything. Going back requires a presence that can support the damage left behind, and there's not always the willingness for that, because between what one wants to say and what the other feels, there's an abyss. And in that abyss lie all the unfulfilled promises, the silence that complicates the distance, the "we'll talk later" that never turned into any conversation. Time passed, and time, contrary to what many like to repeat, does not heal. It hides, it recalculates, it reorganizes the pain, but it remains there, quiet, discreet, waiting for any slightest sign to reopen. And that return was all it took. Now everything is in motion again, not by choice, but by impact, because when someone comes back after leaving, it reactivates what seemed erased. And there's no way to pretend not to feel. Even when the words are impersonal, even when the face remains stoic, even when the heart doesn't beat like before, still, it feels. It's inevitable. But feeling doesn't mean accepting. Feeling doesn't mean wanting it again. Feeling in this case is just a cruel reminder that something was left unfinished. And the unfinished always returns. The problem is what to do with it now. Because there's no manual, there's no map that says whether what returned is sincere regret or just selfish nostalgia. And the one who listens has to decide quickly, without guarantees, without protection, without the promise that this time will be different. And it's at this point that everything breaks. Because what is felt isn't just longing, it's confusion, it's suppressed anger, it's a repressed desire to throw everything back in their face and ask, why now? Why after everything? Why when I was almost learning to forget? But those questions don't come out. They get stuck in the throat while hearing once again the same old refrain disguised as regret. I thought a lot about everything we've been through. Is there still time? Is there still any chance? And the mind refuses to answer, because the heart doesn't know whether it wants to hear yes or no. Going back may seem simple for those who arrive, but for those who stayed, it's a different story. It's having to face memories that were kept hidden at great cost. It's having to revisit scenes that still burn inside. It's having to pretend everything is fine when in reality, the body trembles just from seeing the name light up on the screen. Because this kind of pain doesn't go away. It adapts, it changes locations, it learns to coexist with everyday life. But it doesn't disappear, and now it's here again, with every word spoken, with every memory reactivated, with every possibility that never became a reality. And the only question that matters remains unanswered. Did you come to fix things, or just to mess them up again? Because fixing things requires more than just talk. It requires responsibility. It requires diving into what was left behind. It requires the courage to listen to what the other person endured in silence. And that is something few can sustain. Returning just to ease one's guilt is selfish. Returning just to feel there's still a place, that you still provoke something, that you can still be remembered, it's cruel. And those who come back like this, unprepared, without listening, without genuine remorse, only reopen wounds. Wounds that were quiet, asleep, not healed but under control. And now everything comes back. But not like before. It returns with more coldness. It returns with more barriers. It returns with a filter that time has built. It returns without the innocence of someone who thought love was enough. Because it isn't. It never was. It takes much more than willpower to redo a story. It requires presence. It requires firmness. It requires a willingness to listen without being defensive. It requires accepting that the pain was real and that the harm doesn't disappear just because someone wants to return. Those who come back need to understand this before knocking on the door. Because not every absence deserves a return, and not every return carries redemption. Some come just to test things, others to lighten their own burden. Still others to ensure they still have some kind of emotional control. But those who listen know. They know when it's real. They know when it's a game. They know when an apology is just an excuse to remain present, even when they don't deserve the space. And then it's time to decide. No romanticism, no idealizations, no trying to repeat what didn't work the first time. Just one clear, blunt, direct, uncomfortable question. Did you come to fix things or just to mess them up again? Because if it's to fix things, there needs to be courage. Courage to hear what wasn't said before. Courage to face what was tried to be swept away. Courage not to defend oneself, not to justify, not to try to soften what was harsh for those who remained. Those who hurt don't have the right to dictate how pain should be felt, nor to rush the healing time of those left in pieces. Repairing is stepping into a devastated place, knowing that each step requires care, without demanding forgiveness, without rushing responses, without asking for understanding before offering presence. Now, if it's just to mess things up, if it's just to check if there's still space, if there's still a reaction, if there's still something to feed one's own ego, then don't even knock. Because no one deserves to restart their own grief because of someone else's vanity. No one is obligated to relive what took so much to forget. And no one has to give in just because someone finally realized the value of what they let go. The return might seem romantic to those who come back, but for those who lived through the silence, the absence, the waiting, and the fall, there's nothing beautiful about it. It's just cruel, because the heart, even if hardened, still feels. Even in silence, it still listens. Even when closed off, it still hesitates. And it's in this space of doubt that the risk lies. The risk of giving in. The risk of believing. The risk of letting in what perhaps should never have returned. And those who show up after the absence need to know this. They need to know that those who stayed have changed. That the eyes are no longer the same. That the touch no longer comes without resistance. That the smile doesn't come without a filter. And that the surrender now demands proof, not promises, because promises have been made and all have been forgotten. Now all that is asked, if anything is still asked, is clarity. Why did you come? Out of longing or need, out of love or control, out of remorse or fear of being forgotten. Those who arrive have the obligation to understand, and those who listen have the right to refuse. Refuse the conversation, refuse the invitation, refuse the cycle, because the cycle has already happened, and it left marks. And no matter how much someone insists on saying that time heals all, what time really does is reveal what should never have been tolerated. Now, the body already knows, the mind has already learned, and the heart, even though still sensitive, understands what it deserves and what it can no longer accept. So if there is a return, let it come with responsibility. If there is an attempt to reconnect, let it be made with truth. If there is a desire to repair, let there be no haste, because the damage was done carelessly, and no one fixes what has broken with light talk. It takes more, much more, and sometimes even more isn't enough. Sometimes what broke wasn't just the story. It was respect, it was trust, it was the gaze. And without that, there is no return that lasts. There is no presence that can be sustained. There is no "I've changed" that suffices. So think carefully before returning, because the door may open, but what's inside is no longer what was left behind. It has changed, it has closed, it has relearned, and maybe now it doesn't even want to know anymore. Because knowing hurts. Because making space requires energy that has already been consumed. Because believing again demands a type of faith that was lost along the way. And when you lose faith in another, it's not just about trust. It's about the absence of ground. It's about learning the hard way that not every bond is a refuge. That sometimes what seemed like love was just a disguised form of gentle absence. And when absence is disguised as presence, it confuses. It slowly hurts. It gradually drains. And only when everything collapses does one understand. What was missed wasn't the person. It was self-worth. And now, with the return, all of this comes back to the surface. Every crumb of attention that was accepted as if it were affection. Every silence tolerated as if it were maturity. Every retreat from the other that was interpreted as space, when in reality, it was just disinterest. Going back now requires more than words. It demands explanations that may not exist. And the absence of those explanations weighs heavily. It screams. It hurts more than the silence that came before. Because some things cannot be resolved with "I'm sorry," nor with "I was immature," nor with "I didn't know what I wanted." Those who hurt must understand what they caused. They need to have traced their own steps. They must have had enough time to realize that where there was pain, you cannot tread again with the same lightness as before. And the truth that few have the courage to say is that not every return is welcome. Not every regret deserves a response. Not every gesture of wanting to come back should be accepted as a sign of growth. Many times it's just fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of not having anywhere else to return to. Fear of being forgotten. And those who live in fear build nothing. They only take up space. They only stall processes. They only confuse what was finally starting to be reorganized. So yes, there is the impact of the reunion. Yes, there is a part that hesitates, that remembers, that almost yields. But there is also another part, more lucid, tougher, more real. And this part knows. Sometimes the greatest proof of self-love is not allowing the cycle to restart, even when the heart aches, even when the other's voice sounds different, even when the gaze carries something that seems sincere. Because sincerity without consequence is just talk, and talk when there is no longer trust is just noise. So perhaps the best thing to do now is this: not respond, not embrace, not reopen. Let the other deal with their own emptiness, because no one should be the escape route for someone who only returns when they feel nostalgic, but never stayed when it mattered. And so with quiet firmness, that which seemed endless comes to an end. Not with shouts, not with anger, not with drama, simply with absence. The absence that was once wounded and now is protection. And so it ends. Not with promises, not with cinematic reunions, not with that kind of ending that pleases those who enjoy happy endings. It ends with clarity, with the choice not to repeat, with the courage not to open the door even when the heart trembles. It ends when one understands that not every return is healing. Some are just relapses disguised as regret. Because in the end, the hardest part isn't saying no. It's maintaining that no even when everything around seems to call for the opposite. Even when there are memories. Even when there is longing. Even when there's that thin thread of hope. But hope without responsibility is a trap, and it's no longer possible to fall for the same one. The pain taught, the silence strengthened, absence shaped what was once need. Now, it is criteria. Those who return need to deserve to stay. They must prove with action and consistency that they are no longer the same person who left. And if they can't do that, let them stay outside. Because those who remained survived. And it wasn't by luck. It was by effort. It was by learning to say, enough. Now the cycle closes, not with shouts nor with scandal, but with firmness and respect for all that has been transformed in the process. Anyone who wants to come back will find a different person, someone who no longer gets fooled easily, who no longer romanticizes the bare minimum, who no longer accepts halves. And if the door doesn't open, let that be understood as an answer as well. Because sometimes silence is the only mature way to close what should never have started that way. If this story resonated with you, if it provoked you, if it reminded you of someone, if it opened something that was quietly inside, then comment below. Tell us what you would do. Would you leave the door ajar or close it for good? Your experiences can resonate with those who are also in that emotional limbo. Give a like if this content made sense to you. It helps this message reach those who need to hear it today. Share it with someone who is caught between doubt and courage. Maybe that person needs the push that you can offer. And if you want to follow reflections like this, unfiltered without formulas and superficiality, subscribe to the channel. Here, what matters isn't the pretty ending. It's the raw truth, the one no one wants to say, but that, sooner or later, needs to be said.